Welcome to this Micrographics webinar. Today's topic is Autodesk Vault tips and tricks. This webinar will cover, I know it says Vault Professional on the bottom here, but some of the things will be useful to both Vault Professional, Workgroup, and Vault Basic. So it just depends on what version you have, which features will be available to you. But nevertheless, let's get started. So what is the purpose of today's webinar? Well, we want to help Vault administrators more effectively use their Vault to better suit their organization's design workflow. So what does that mean? Basically, as someone who works in an application engineer position, we find when we go out to many of our clients, each one has a different workflow and they have different criteria for what they want, how they want to put it in the Vault. They have different numbers of teams and engineers working on stuff, and they want to organize it in a specific way according to their part numbers, according to their job types. It just depends on the company. Now, we've noticed that a lot of our clients don't actually know what tools are available for them to actually make the best of Vault's flexibility. Okay. Our agenda for today. Well, we're going to talk about getting started. When you first set up your Vault, what should you be doing and how you can better organize the folder structure. Secondly, we're going to look at selecting a workflow. So building off from what I've said in the purpose of the webinar. Okay, you're going to find that selecting a workflow is going to be dependent on what type of business you are. Then we're going to discuss how you should be uploading existing data sets. Now, this could mean a couple of things. So when you're looking at just maybe you get some external data and you want to upload it, people are very unsure on how they should do it, whether they should open it and save it in their local workspace, or how do I get it onto Vault? What if it's a lot of stuff? Well, we'll discuss all of that. We're going to look at customizing the columns and the windows. It's very important because I think a lot of people don't leverage the fact that Vault has little icons and glyphs in the columns that kind of help you see better what's happening. Then we're going to talk about enforcing a folder structure. So once you select a workflow, you can enforce that folder structure, and we're going to play around with certain properties. And you'll see the next topic there is coming up, custom rules for folders, files, and items. Okay, then we're going to talk about something that I'm sure most people use, but maybe they don't know. There's just a small trick in there. To use certain properties, we can talk about saved searches, saved searches, property writebacks, which is basically where you find that you have Vault properties and inventor properties and how you can have those two interact with each other. There's a little tip and trick there. And lastly, we'll talk about enforcing data standards, although there's no real slide for that. Right, firstly, getting started. You'll know that when you're setting up your Vault workspace, you'd want to create, you want to find a local workspace, and you want to create 3 folders in there. Right? I'm going to take you to my local workspace and show you what that's all about. So when I started creating my Vault, I created a folder called Content Center Files, Designs, and Libraries. These were obviously mapped to certain areas in my Vault. Right? So I'm going to open my Vault and show you what that looks like. You'll see here, with Content Center, Design, and Libraries. Now, you'll notice that my project file sits here, but you can, in fact, simply drag it and take it outside to the Project Explorer. Similarly, when you do create those 3 folders, you're going to need to go into your Inventor to create a project file, correct? Right, so let's see what happens when you do that. I'm just going to take you to an example. When you do go to your projects and you create a new project file, it will create that IPJ in the root folder. So if you click the designs folder, the IPJ will go there. Now, once that's done, you can obviously go to your Vault and you're going to map it, right? You're going to map your folders. Okay, cool. I've got files open, so that's why the error came. But you're going to map it to some folder. Now, here's where the tip and trick comes in. If you map it, you cannot map it to the root $sign folder because by default, it's going to be $sign some folder. And $subfolder. So what's going to happen here is going to put designs in the designs folder here where it's mapped. So if you say $designs, whatever you save inside here is going to go into $designs. However, if you look at my local workspace, it's going to map this folder called designs inside the folder called designs. So what do? I simply take this demo project and I move it outwards one. So I can simply cut it and move it outwards so that it lives here. That way it won't duplicate this designs folder. And that will work, it won't break anything. That's just a little nice tip and trick so you can get rid of any duplicates while still keeping, sorry, your folder structure on your Vault workspace exactly how you see it on the structure here. Right? So that's what I said. The 3 steps: you create your 3 folders, you map your folders, and then you move a project file back out to the root folder on your local workspace to avoid the duplicate structure. Right? Then these 2 things that I notice clients don't use is that they should be forcing consistent workspace for all users. So that you'll find under your Vault tools and actions. So you'll find that in your options, you can set a project file, which will be the demo. So that means the moment you load Vault, this one will be used by default. Then you can go here and you can define the working folder. Right? In your working folder, we can enforce consistent working folder for all clients, meaning that whenever clients open the Vault, whoever it is down the line, they will always retrieve everything to C drive, Vault workspace, just how I have set it here. Same here with the project file. It will always use that IPJ whenever they open the Inventor or Vault. Now that will give you some consistency so that if anything goes wrong and you need to sort something out on a colleague's machine, you know exactly where to find things and nothing will be written incorrectly. We're just going to go back to our PowerPoint. Okay, the next little tip here we have is selecting a folder structure workflow. So I've got 2 points here, and one thing I want to talk about is setting up your folder structure on Windows by creating a template folder with all the subfolders that you require. So let me show you what I mean, because it's very difficult to understand or very vague rather. Let's take a look at my demo workflow that I have here for some client, right? You can put files in your design folder, right? Those 2 libraries there. And I've got, in my designs folder, I've got a folder where I'll put in some documents. Now remember, you've got to have some place to put documents because when you attach documents to parts, they've got to be on the Vault first. So that's one tip there. You got to have a separate area for your documents. So I've created it like so. And I've got another area for products where, in this case, we're talking about a client that does jobs on the basis of clients, right? Now you'll notice that each of these folders will have these subfolders here. For client 1, there's the CAD data, there's the documents that go with the job, and there's the drawings and electrical schematics and whatever else, right? However, when I go to client 2, I want to have that repeated and that repeated. There's no easy way to consistently make those folders all over again. I mean, I cannot just copy and paste. It's not like Explorer. So does that mean you have to, every time you make a new client folder, you have to create the stuff from scratch? Not necessarily. A little cheat code here is to simply make a new data standard folder, right? We can call it client 9, right? It will be a normal folder in here. Just gonna, right? So here's client 9. I want that same folder structure. So what I'll do is I'll create some sort of temporary structure anywhere on my PC. It can be on my desktop. It can be in my local workspace. In my case, I have it on my desktop. So for example, any new client that I make, I want this folder structure here to be copied into it. So I'll simply have my Vault open, and I'll just copy that folder structure into my client folder. Now notice that it's sort of like checking in blank folders. It's sort of like automatically just adding files that are blank or other folders that are blank. Notice that even all the subfolders and the documents came in there as well. So with one click, I've now created that folder structure in my new client folder. So that's just a little workaround to getting your things in order each time. All right. Next up, let's go to workflows. Okay, like we said, we want to pick our workflow depending on the type of company that we are, whether we're working on a jobs basis, on a client basis, or on a products basis. So you'll see the setup that I've done is a sort of a hybrid of the two, where we've got products, but products are dependent on client names. And I've just made a client one, client two. Right? You can have access to these folders depending on life cycles, folder restriction, or special types of folders. So let's take a look at what that means exactly. So by default, I've created a category here for just products and documents, but you'll see here I have a separate category for research and development. So all these fall under the R&D category, which I've created from scratch. Now, these have different properties attached to it, and there's two ways that you can control access to folders. Okay, one is obviously by life cycles. Right? So we know that if you go to Tools, Administration, Vault Settings, and look at Behaviors and Life Cycles, we know that any of these categories, like maybe it's a base category, maybe it's a folder category, we can say that it follows a specific life cycle, or any of the files inside of them follow a specific life cycle, right? We can say that for our security, when it releases or when it reaches the release state, we can say, let me edit that. Right? So when it releases the release date, I can block certain people from accessing it, right? So I can add in exactly who I want. So I can go in here and I can add in a new user and say this person is now no, or these people or this group is no longer allowed to change it. However, in situations where you don't want the lifecycle used, or if you have Vault Basic, you can still control these folders by simply going to details. Although this is very manual, it won't have any life cycles, of course, but you can block out security. Now you'll see here I have override state-based security because I have Vault Professional. So I can say that whatever is written here takes preference over the state. So regardless of whether it's released, everyone will have access to allow, delete, download, etc. Okay, so that is one way of controlling access to folders. I'm just going to go here. Right, then we're going to talk about special types of folders. Like I said, I've created a category for a folder, and we're going to discuss more of that in detail. But just to give you the gist of it, is that in these categories, you can sort of set all of them. If I, for example, change the category of all of this, I can use this little button here to change all of these subfolders to a different category. So for example, like so. And now these, because they belong to a different category, they will have different rules associated with them. So you can leverage the fact that if it belongs to a different category, it's no longer the same as whatever's kept in a normal folder. Okay, and we'll discuss this, like I said, in the next couple of slides where we talk about rules, etc. Right. This is also a nice tip and trick. We often get the question of how can we check in data? And this comes from both first-time users into the Vault. They're introducing the Vault for the first time. They've got a whole bunch of data set or already done drawings and stuff, and they need to put it into the Vault. In this case, we will usually recommend Autoloader. right? So if you don't know what Autoloader is, every time you install a Vault client, it will automatically install Autoloader for you. So you can just type it into the Windows search bar and you'll find that. So what does Autoloader do? It basically takes a project file, right? And it looks for all the data associated with that project file. It goes and finds it, and it loads it into a list, right? That list will be checked, and it has a tool to painstakingly go through it, or rather automatically go through it. So you don't have to painstakingly go through it. And it'll try to open each one and check that everything is valid and all the links are. If it fails, it will tell you, listen, these files failed and you need to fix them before I can check it in for you. So it will not allow you to proceed until all errors are fixed. Let me show you what that looks like. Autoloader. So when you open up Autoloader from the start menu here, just go auto up. I'll have to show you it on my other screen, but anyway, here it is open. You'll find that it brings up a wizard and you can select an area or where you have files located. So for example, if I were to go, well, I suppose designs will have that file here. What it's going to do, it's going to find all the project files that it can see in there. And it says, okay, here I see you have the demo project file. And I say, yes, I want to use that. So what it's going to do, it's going to take a look at this folder structure. Okay, and it's going to search for all the files in there. When I click next, it looks for all the data in there. And once it finds all the data in there, sorry, I've just minimized that. But once it finds all the data in there, it's going to tell you, listen, I've found all of this and I've checked it, I've scanned it, and it's all good to go. So what I need to do is click scan and it will scan it. In this case, there's only 9 files, so it's going to be fairly quick. But you can see it's telling me that is successfully opened. All of them are, and you're good to go. If one of them had, let's say, a problem in a child or a parent file, for example, maybe the drawing was invalid or something linked to it was not found, maybe it was corrupt, it'll tell you here, not successfully opened, fix it or remove it from the list before we add it on. So I can go next, and it'll ask me to check into the vault, or rather to sign into the vault, right? And it's going to ask you where you want to place it. You can say designs and so on and so on. You can choose how you want to have it checked in. Of course, I'm not going to go all the way because I've already got that data checked in, but this is one way to check in a whole bunch of data. So what's the benefit of this? Well, this is if, like I said, it's your first time moving into Vault and you have a lot of data, maybe 30, 100, 200 gigabytes of data. And this sort of scan helps you just check that everything is intact and good to go. Right? So it will help you clean up and neaten up your data. But it'll also help you find and filter duplicates. You'll find that it'll check for all files that are duplicates and you can remove them, etc. Right? So that is one way to check in existing data sets. The second way to check in existing data sets, and this is using Inventor directly, right? This is to use the Vault Server option. So file Vault Server check-in project. So let's show you what that looks like. So it depends on which project you have open. So whatever your current project is, so for example, this one is demo, right? I will go to File, Vault Server, check in, or if you just hover over this little arrow here, you've got check-in project. Right? So check-in project means everything that's in your local workspace under this current IPJ file here that's not checked in is going to be chucked into the vault. Right? So how does it look? Let's just take a look. If I just check a project, it's going to scan for everything that's not checked in. There's, okay, listen, I found these files that are on your local workspace, but they are not on the vault. It did that check for me, and it's asked me, okay, these ones, do you want to check them in? I'm going to say yes. Okay, cool. I want to check all of them in one shot, right? And I can do that like so. Right? So what's the benefit here? Well, let's take a look at our slide. So like I said, it will use the current active project file to check in all files in the workspace that are not checked in. Right? So let's say you already have a Vault setup, you guys are using it amongst your team, and you want to now you've gotten a design from a third party or an old design that you found somewhere, and now you want to check it into the Vault. Well, you would simply place it into your local workspace, however many there are, maybe there are 5 different folders, and you can put them into your local workspace. You can go to File, Vault Server, Check in Project. It will say, hey, those files are on my local workspace, but they're not existing they're not checked into my Vault. Do you want to check them in? Yep. And it will send them all to the Vault in one shot. You don't have to open each one individually to check them in. So that will save you some time there as well, right? It's good for selected data sets, like in the example I just gave you. But it's not good for large data sets like the initial time that you're moving into Vault, for the simple reason that it doesn't give you an interface to fix or sort out data. That little progress bar that you saw, if something is in error or if there's something that's broken, it will just cut off and freeze. So let's say you check in quite a few files in your local workspace, let's say maybe 10 gigabytes of stuff. If just one file is incorrect, the whole thing will bomb out, and then you won't get your stuff loaded in. And it's going to be a problem to find exactly what bombed it out and what caused the issue. So again, not good for large data sets. You have to have perfectly good data to just easily check it in without opening each one individually. The other benefit of this, it does detect PDFs, documents, IDWs, and DXFs. So linked PDFs, linked DXFs, all of that stuff. If you do have a data set with that stuff, it will check it in for you. Obviously, following the same structure that it is in the local workspace. And yeah, so also it's good for when you, let's say, in December now, you are going off on holiday and you want to check out stuff to work with during the break. So you would check them all out, maybe 5 or 10 designs. You would work with them, you'd come back to work in January, and you don't have to open each one or try and remember what you were working with. You simply go check in project, and all of those things that you were busy with will now be checked in. Okay, so now we're going to talk about customizing the layout and columns. By the way, if you guys have any questions, you are more than welcome to type it in, or you can even just interrupt me, but that's fine. We will have a Q&A session at the end. But again, there is a chat icon on the bottom of your TeamViewer. You're more than welcome to ask any questions as I go along, because it can sometimes be difficult to remember at the end of all of this. Right, so columns, what am I talking about here? Well, in your Vault, you will find that you have different display areas. Well, you guys know that if you're using the Vault, this is your display area for your folder browser. So if you're your browser tree here, right? And in any of these folders, when you click on an item or a folder, you get a submenu on the bottom showing you specifics about that particular item. Now, you do know that these columns up here can be customized. And this is super important because some of the important or indicators are not shown or not on by default. So how do we do that? We simply go right click on the column, we go to customize view, and we customize the fields. The important ones that I would say are really helpful and people don't realize they are these. It's Vault status modifier, the attachments, and the checked out by columns or the fields. So I tried to put them on here before we started, and I put Vault status modifier, and attachments. So what exactly are these? Well, Vault status is obviously telling you what state the current design is in. So for example, if I have that part in there, right? It's not checked out, it's not broken, or it's not checked out by someone else. It is simply no status, right? False status modifier will actually look at what's in your local workspace. So if I have this particular part 2 in my local workspace and there is a mismatch between what's here and what's on the local workspace, it will tell me, hey, hold on, this is in error, or this is mismatched rather, not in error. Third one there is the attachments, right? This will indicate whether you have any attachments on that file. Again, a lot of people don't know you can simply attach things to your uh, part, like maybe a document that goes with that particular part. And the fourth one there is the category. So if you have a custom category and custom rules for that part, you can show exactly which category it is. I would generally keep them in that order, but it's really up to you. So let me just show you how that works. So we know that if I open this and I say check it out, we know that indeed the status modifier tells us this is checked out by me. I've also got the checked out by column, which you should add as well from your customized view. So it tells it who it's checked out by. And when you click on it, it gives you a different set of columns that you can further customize down here. Now, if I go in and I make a change to this in my inventor, this is open here, and let us say I go in and I make a change to this, say finish sketch. So I've now cut that out. Okay, so I'm going to save it and close it. So I'm just going to simply save it and close it. I'm going to say no. I'm just going to say no. What's going to happen is if I refresh it here, it's going to tell me, hey, hold on, you've got this part, it's still checked out to you, but your local file is also modified, which means even though you got it checked out, you also made changes, which means you do need to save and check it in or stuff like that. So that is why I have these two in combination at the front here telling me that one is checked out, two, it's modified. Okay. You notice that when I now check it in, and I hit the refresh, you'll find that now it's checked in, and now the status modifier indicates that both this one and the one I've checked out, and the one I've got on my local workspace, sorry, is the same. Okay. Next one is attachments. Like I said, we can simply attach things to our design. So I can find something to attach, and I can find from my design. So I have like a document in here. I'll just attach it to here. So we are now going to attach this to our part, and it indicates that, hold on, this has attachment. Now you'll see the status is also changed. Why did that change? Status indicator. Well, now we have edited the properties of this part too. The properties for the attachments has now become, yes, it does have an attachment. So that's why that's why it's telling me, hey, hold on, incorrect version, refresh the file. So it's telling me now that I need to I'll say get it. Now that I've got it to my local workspace, it says, now you've got the latest version. Good to go. So it's sort of like, can you see how important these things are? It sort of like tells us this one is when your local file is modified, it indicates here. And this one is when the file of the vault is modified. And it tells you here that this one is a status mismatch. Okay. Let's go back to our slideshow. All right. The other thing we can do is we can enforce a vault structure using vault data standards. So we're going to touch a little more on vault data standards, but in case nobody's aware of what vault data standards are, it is a little extra installation tool that comes up as an add-in in your CAD software, such as Inventor or AutoCAD. So how does it look? If I go to my Inventor, you'll find that I have a data standards tab in here, right? So this means that whenever I create a new design, it's going to force me to put in some data. So it forces me to put in some data based on a data sheet that I set up for my data standards. So what does that look like? That looks like this. So depending on the category that it is in, I can say, listen, it needs to have these types of folders in here. So you can see this one is already done, right? I put it under the category base and it should have these properties for it. What happens if I create a new design? Well, if I create a new design, I'm just going to create some silly box. Okay. Okay. So you'll see that when I save it for the first time, it's going to bring up the data standards box and it's going to ask me a couple of things. It's going to ask me for certain folders that I can define on my data sheet, right? So I can say, okay, it must go into a particular folder. Let's say I want to put this in my products folder under client 9. It's going to pull out exactly what folders are on the vault already. Right? So this kind of blocks me from just saving it anyway and forces me to use a folder structure on the vault. So that means if the folder doesn't exist on the vault, I need to make it. So let's say I want to place it in client 10. I will have to go and create client 10 on my vault. And I'll say, okay, cool, client 10. Right, you'll find it down there. And now my vault will be able to, or sorry, my inventor will be able to see it. I'll say products, client 10. It's going to go under a different category. So I can say it's going to be your engineering category. And I can put in some name or numbering scheme as I want. I'll just call it part 4 for now, and I'll check it in. Right? You'll see that it would be forced to put it in to that specific folder directly from the vault. Nobody can mess up the folder structure. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing again, but you find that I've added some extra functionality by making clever use of the naming and numbering schemes. So for example, if I go to here and I say, let's create a new standard folder, right? I want it to automatically increment the next numbering scheme on my new folder in here, right? So I can say it's going to be let's say a quick folder to match all of these. The numbering scheme will be R&D folders, and you'll see it'll be the words resource project with the next incremented number in there. So I can say, okay, without having to do anything, I know it's going to automatically bump up to 16, and we can continue from there. Okay, which means if I do create a new design, okay, let me just check it in directly. It's going to say save it, yes. I can look at research and development 16 and maybe use a different numbering scheme to get an automated number in there. So we're just doing a few clicks, I can keep my folder structure in order without having to change anything, without having to type anything. Okay, so just hit refresh there. And you'll see it bumped it up to the next number. Right, we're moving on to the next slide. So number schemes, rules, and categories. We've now done up until there. So we haven't discussed rules and categories. So what's the big deal about rules and categories? Well, I noticed that a lot of our clients don't tend to use it because it can be a bit confusing. So hopefully I can make some sense of it for you. So if you go to Vault settings, you'll find that under behaviors tab, you have this area here called categories. I think I actually have a slide on it. So let's just go move on to the next slide. Right, so custom rules. You'll find that there's assignment rules, and These are used to automatically assign a category based on a criteria. Okay, so what exactly does that mean? So let's see here, right? If I've done something where I want to automatically check something in and it must follow a certain category, I can create a rule for that. So let's start off simply by defining what a category is. We know that we can create our own custom categories, for example, a file or a folder category. And for example, here I've created an R&D category for folders, right? A quick category for folders. And for files, I've created like engineering, blah, 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 right? So let us take an example where I've got this engineering category, right? And it's got a specific lifecycle process attached to it, or I can make my own. With these categories, you can assign, again, its own lifecycle, its own revision scheme, and its own properties that you have. You might want to edit these and add in its own custom property, right? But remember, whenever it sees the blue engineering category, it's going to follow this lifecycle, this revision number scheme, and these kind of properties. Okay. So how do we use that with rules? Well, with rules, you can say any particular criteria. If your design meets any particular criteria, it must fall under that category. Right? So for example, I've created a rule called R&D. And let's take a look at how cleverly I use this to automate some stuff. I've created a rule called R&D rule. And I said that it must revert to R&D work if the folder part contains research and development. Right? So what does it mean? It means that if I check in something and I check it into research and development, the category of that file, remember it's a file rule, must be R&D work. I think I also have some folder rules, same here. But let's see file rule. Let's see how exactly this works. I'm going to try and place a file inside research and development, and we'll take a look at what that does. Right? So let's go to our inventor. We'll create a new design. And I'm just going to create something silly. Now, let us say that's our part. Now, I obviously need to save it and check it in. So I'll go to my Vault. I'll say, let's check it in. Right? I want to save it. Okay. Because I've got my data standards, it's going to, now I'm deliberately going to choose a different category. I'm going to choose the category called base. I'm going to say that this was the default category. It's going to go into base, and I'm going to point it to save in the research and development folder, the root folder, just so we can find it easily, right? So it's going to go into research and development as category base. But remember, we put a rule that anything you check into here, if the folder path contains these words, it must change the category to something else, right? So I can say, let's put a sequential number scheme. Okay, cool. Now, if I put base in here, it should check in as base, but watch what happens. Say, okay, cool. Notice how this part here automatically changed to R&D work. Why? Because of the rule I entered, even though you saw right there that I had base. Just to prove to you that it's not by default, let us go and check it in or make a new design. And sorry, I'm making this new design. If I check the same thing into a different folder, let's say I check it into products in the root folder, I'm going to put it as a base file, right? So it's going to be generic. We'll also use a sequential numbering scheme. It's going to go in there. If I go to my root products, you'll find that it's sequentially, but notice the category is base. The rule was not activated because the folder part did not have these words. So automation can be really cleverly done if you think about exactly what you want to do. Hopefully I didn't go too fast there, and hopefully you guys made sense of it. And as CAD administrators, you can probably think of ways to leverage that kind of rule structure. Okay, I'm going to continue from current slide. So just like that, you can say if it was designed by person X, you can assign it to category A, and in turn, that category can have a different life cycle, different properties, etc., etc. So rules are used to automatically assign categories. Categories have different properties and life cycles attached to them. Does that make sense? Well, I hope it does. Any questions? Okay, we can leave the questions till the end. Oh, I see we do. Cool. No, just no. Okay, cool. Right. Save searches. I don't know if many people use these. I'm sure people do because they see it there, and you can create a save search folder, and it basically offers you quick access to common filter sets. So for example, if you want to check all parts starting with 001 or ending with whatever, or all parts starting with 001 and that was checked out last week, to find changes. So not only is it a quick filter, it's also accepting multiple criteria. So let's take a look at what that looks like. If you go to our find, right, you can say, all right, I want to create a new search that's all paths that are maybe checked out last week. You can say checked out, let's say last 5 days, 5 days, right? And you can add this to your criteria, and you can also say checked out by, and you can say is, and you can type your name or whatever it is, and you can say, so you can check all of this stuff that was checked out by a specific person. I'm going to type in administrator, or file checked out in the last 5 days by administrator. And so these are multiple criteria that you can search for, and you can save this in your my search folders category here. So I'll save it. Checked out by admin 5 days. Okay, so I'll save that. You'll find that you can quickly go to that filter. And the nice thing about the search is that it's different from the browser in that it can have different columns listed up here when you search for it. Unfortunately, it cannot have different columns between different searches. So all the searches will have the same columns, but the columns can be different from what you see up here, which is nice, right? The tip and trick, or that I would say most people aren't aware of, is that they are aware that you can search for checked out files, but they're not sure how they can just find all that are currently checked out. Well, there actually is a way, right? Because you're probably thinking, well, here I just typed in a name, so checked out by Stephen or checked out by John will be a criteria. But they do have a way to filter that out, and it's currently checked out. I'll show you how I did it. You can say, you go to the checked out field, and you say the condition is not empty, which means that the checked out by field here, that checked out by field, if it's not empty, meaning it has somebody's name, John, Stephen, Paul, whoever, it means it's populated. That means somebody has checked it out. So if the field is not empty, then that means it's checked out. Kind of makes sense. And then you would use that to filter out to check for all the files that are currently checked out. So you come in the morning, you want to know who's busy with what. You can just click on that and it says, okay, John's doing that, Peter's doing that, and so on. Are data standards available on Vault Basic? I think they are. I just need to double check. I could be wrong. I will get back to you on that. Let us move on to the slides. All right. And this brings us to the last slide for the day, which is property writebacks. Okay, so we know that we have Vault properties, right? There are two types of properties associated with a file when you check them into the vault. Right? One is system defined and one is user defined. So you'll see the little icon there when you go to the properties under tools, administration, all of that. You'll find that the system one has like a little cogwheel and the user one has a little person. So user defined and system defined. So the difference is obviously system defined you cannot change or you cannot tell it to change. It's written by Vault when a certain thing has changed, right? When a system value has changed. User defined can be interesting because you can, well, it'll refer to things like the file name, which means you can change the name of the file, which is obvious. But also you can create your own property, like let's say you want all the files. Let's show you by example here. Let's say you're working with research and development projects, and you want specific files to say, right, when it's now, they follow a different life cycle. When it's released, I must now mark them or must now put them into a different category, right? So I must change the category. So you can do it in a sort of a logical process here, right? So what can we do? We can take a look at, let's say, that file. Currently, it's under R&D work. It says when it's now released into a different lifecycle, when it's released, I can, let's say, change state. Oh, I don't have any lifecycle here, sorry. But let's say I change state and now I wanted to go onto products category or base category. At the moment I say released, it's base category, right? What I can do is I can go to my administration. I can create a property, right? And I can call it R&D done or something like that. I create a new property called R&D done. It's going to be a user and it can be like a Boolean value. Now, the reason I have to create a property for this is because it only applies to parts inside of here, not parts everywhere else. Right? Only parts inside of research and development. So I'll say new property. It's going to be R&D done. Not just whatever it's called, right? And it'll be either true or false, right? And the mapping, which will mean whether it's written from the file to Vault or from the Vault to file, we'll just leave it as standard. But the default state, initial value, we can say initial value will be false, so it's not done until something happens, right? So we'll create that R&D done. That's a new property that we created. And now what we can do is we can create a rule such that something takes on a new category, something takes on, say, file rules, a base category, when, right? Let's make a new rule here. RD done. It must be base when your particular value changes. So you can have a user value. I don't know if I can find my user value. These are also only system values. Let me just edit this. But basically, what we want to do is we want to set this to when it's a when your R&D done value, your property hits a certain value, like true. We can say that the category must now be base. I'm not sure if I can see it here or if I can do this. I may be mistaken. I think I am. Sorry about that. But basically what we're allowed to do is, basically set some rules according to some properties, and you'll be able to leverage out your I'm just going to go back to the slides. Okay, so we'll create a user-defined property. We can set a default to false, and we can create some lifecycle definition based on, oh yes, I think I've missed out a step. Right. So in your lifecycle definition, change release state to change property to true. Yeah, so let's see if I can get it. Hopefully I can get it working. So basically, I think I need to edit the lifecycle state. So let's go to behaviors and life cycles. Let's edit that. So when it's released, yeah. So when it's released, we can say, okay, it must apply to a category. So I'm just looking for where we can change it. I suppose we can always just use in a comment, and we can say in your rule, we can say if the comment is released to manufacturing, we can change the content to whatever it is. I suppose we can. Yeah, so we can say when the comment says released to manufacturing, then we can change it to a base category and so on and so forth. So yeah, I was quite sure I could do it in another way, but I think you can just use one of the system variables instead of a user variable. But the idea being is that use these properties to automatically change rules and categories. Okay, so I think now we've reached the end of our presentation. It was just a little quick tips and tricks for any CAD administrator out there. You're welcome to contact me should you have more complex questions. I do need to check on the Vault data standards. Right, so I'm pretty sure it is available. Just need to check because Inventor does change things. Okay. Okay, this is our site. According to it, if you're using Vault Workgroup or Vault Professional, you'll notice tools and utilities. Okay, so it is not available on Vault Basic. Sorry. It's kind of hard to remember from my side as well, but I can guarantee it is not available on Vault Basic. Only with Workgroup or Professional. Okay, any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you very much, man.
Okay, cool. No worries. I will, with that, I will end off the webinar here. Like I said, you can take our details down, or I'll just put up our website and our slides. Once again, thank you, and have a good rest of your afternoon. Hopefully you join us for the next webinar.